conversation. What we do on this show is we just have conversation with ordinary people about real life, and we are going to talk about something that's pretty significant: money.
Dollar bill,
Dollar
y'all.
bills, y'all.
Yeah, everybody love money now.
Right.
So, the inspiration for this show is I was just thinking about, being a dad and how the years went by. And I remember certain times in my life where I was just busted. Like, car broke down in the middle on the way to work. I don't know how I'm going to get to work. I ain't got no money. I don't know who to call. Those situations of just being busted, just being out there and not just being stuck, and just really realizing that, like, man, I got to get this thing together. And then that feeling of like, man, I'm the man. I got a kid, I got a wife, I'm supposed to be out here holding it down. And it's kind of like that feeling of like, man, I'm messing up. Like, man, I'm supposed to be more together than this or whatever. So I was just thinking, can you guys remember a time in your life where you was just out there, like just in a bad situation?
Well, sometimes it comes all at once. It's like when it snowballs. It's like one bad thing happen after the next, but then it also happens where one good thing happens after the next also. So, yeah, of course, from utilities, being shut off, kids needing to eat, I can't necessarily eat myself right now because, they need to eat, or, a thing in particular that I'm, today, it's not that I'm busted by it, but something I've been working toward for a while, and that's leaving a legacy for my kids. Or my grandkids, actually. Yeah. And so, that's kind of been my drive. So, like, these little pitfalls I get, little things I run into, I just typically just keep that. Like, you know what? I'm gonna die trying. If I get it, I get it. If I don't, I'm gonna be dead trying to get it. So,
what about you, Roy?
You know what, Greg? I'm not even gonna lie to you. I've had great parents, and I am a bachelor, and I don't have any children. So most of my financial woes are self-inflicted. And if they are self-inflicted, there are places I could go to help out if I need it. But what it has done, I feel like it has I'm not gonna say crippled me, but it has caused me to give a second thought before moving into marriage and a serious relationship, because as watching parents and a father who was able to prepare for his children, I feel that weight, like you were talking about. I feel that weight. I feel that responsibility. And that's not something that I take lightly. Financial security is something that me and my father often talked about and often still talk about. So, I just feel that weight of, hey, if you're not ready to step out here and handle everything that comes, don't be out here calling for no family, calling for no kids, and nothing like that. So,
man, see, this is the golden child. See, I wish I had that type of clarity but I had a kid super young. But I'll share a moment for me that was really bad. Is I was in the Navy, and I was gone. So I lived out in Seattle, and then I worked for the airlines. I had a really good job, but then 9/11 happened. So 9/11 happened, and it got short in the airlines, and they started laying off. So I'm the one black guy that's working out here in Atlanta. So I'm the first dude they lay off. I just bought a house. I bought a house when I was 24. So, like, through times I struggled to try to keep that house, but I ended up losing that house, and I had to just go through that process. I mean, I was super depressed, bro. Like, it's super hard because, and so I know what that feels like, but I know you guys, because y'all my people, and we do have that pressure to provide. And times are tough now. I feel like people in the audience could probably, it's a stat I heard, like the bottom half of the wage earners, the bottom half make $10.44 an hour. Like the bottom half of that's half of the country. That is not enough money.
Right. to live away.
To live.
It's funny you mention that. I see that all the time. Like just last year when we had the sequester, and you see government workers who you traditionally you feel like have good government jobs miss one pay. They only miss one pay, and they were already in line talking about getting food from food kitchens. And another stat that I recently saw is they were talking about over 70% of Americans don't even have $400 in the bank.
Yeah.
In case of an emergency. $400.
Yeah.
That is not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so not to have $400 cash on hand. And the last thing it's funny you bring this up. And I was on YouTube the other day and they got this thing called van life, where these people are actually taking U-Haul vans and conversion vans and living in them, converting them into houses.
Wow.
And living in the van.
Wow.
Because where they live,
it's that expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's real out here. It's real out here. And we, like you said, at 24, to be where you were to say you were buying your first home, even though it didn't work out, I salute you for being there.
That's right.
You know, because at 24, oh my God, no.
So I got a question. Why is it like this? Like, because there's one thing. There's just kind of like pop culture and materialism and keeping up with the Joneses. There's a greater financial crunch that's happening as far as just the average person. How much actual like liquid money that he has, and you know, and then specifically like being black, I think it's intensified because there's not a lot of guys that got to grow up like my cousin Roy did. Like, out of all our dads are brothers, everybody in the family didn't grow up like that. Like me and my brothers in the same family, even my dad had a good job eventually, but like we didn't have it like that. Like it was no money, like, you know what I'm saying? So why do y'all think it is how it is? And do you think it's more systemic, or do you think it's cultural, or like what is it?
I think it's systemic. I think it's cultural. I think it's like you said, society, pressures from society. But one of the things that I think, because there's always pressure, I think what's different for the black man and his drive to want to take care of the family is because we're displaced, like in the country, in our homes, in our communities. We're displaced, and that's the only thing that can validate us in our homes is bringing money, like what you bringing to the table, because like, I mean,
yeah, I mean,
you know what I'm saying?
It's a weird situation because when you started, I think a lot about materialism in itself, right? Like, I mean, everywhere you go, no institution is free from it. If you go to church, sometimes people are materialistic about church. Like, people talk about houses and cars and blah blah blah, like that same kind of bling bling type, like every part of society.
I think tithing should be private.
Yeah.
I think offering and tithing should be private.
I think to answer your question though, I think we suffer from both. I think it's systemic as far as, and when you think about banking and like redlining practices, when we think about, for example, they were building homes. Most of my family lives on St. Clair. My grandfather wasn't given the opportunity to buy property in Wickliffe or Willoughby and build on the land and let the land appreciate in value. Now the home is, my grandparents have passed and the home is ready to be almost bulldozed. So, they didn't have that opportunity to have that pass down that generational wealth. And I believe that it's also cultural too, because we can't blame everything on our past, because, I'm responsible for the purchases that I make today. The money that I have to be a good steward of my finances today. And I believe, this is my own personal belief, and it's kind of controversial, but I just feel as a people, as a black culture, we suffer from almost a psychosis of not feeling good about ourselves. So we lean to material items to help us feel better about ourselves. And so we almost rather be poor and look rich, and that doesn't match. So, and the other thing is, it's our responsibility. My dad always taught me, though, it's our responsibility. Our financial literacy is our responsibility. Like, they don't teach you about money. And I taught math in school. I'm a teacher. I'm a special ed teacher. There's no curriculum for you teaching about finances in my math class. So it's the responsibility of the people in your household to teach you about money, how money works, finances, and financial literacy. If you don't take the time to listen to things about finances, we got Chris Hogan, you got people like
there's plenty of people out here.
Oh my God, but it's all kinds of people out here who will talk to you about financial literacy. Dr. Boyce Watkins talks about it all the time. So if you don't take on that responsibility, and then not only for yourself, but for the next generation, we got kids. They and this my students are interested in it, though. They are interested in stocks. What happened recently with the coronavirus? I was talking to my students about. I always tell my students, don't wear the company, own the company. A couple years ago, Nike shares were trading at like $65 a share, and I used to tell them, you can get 4 shares of Nike for what you pay for those LeBrons. And I didn't invest in it even in myself. And so now 2 years later, I'm not teaching math now, but 2 years later, now that stock was trading for a little over $100, $101 a share. And I say, man, I missed that opportunity. And so, but then everything happened with the coronavirus thing, and we see how those prices drop back down. So things happen in the world when you have opportunity. So if someone was smart and saved money and knew anything about financial literacy, then they know that this is the time to buy. This is when millionaires are made.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that's a challenge, and it is definitely culturally driven, is our discipline. Because, we got people that make good money, I think I do decent, but it's the discipline that we have when we do it. But see, that money just illuminates in one area. But when we look at how we grocery shop, or how we plan our day at work, or how we, dress ourselves or shower, you can't separate yourself from who you are. So money just communicates the emotional side of it. So if you can't have the discipline financially, you're lacking discipline in other areas too. So I just look at it.
That's super true. But I got a thought that I've always thought about is, all right, so when you look at the heart of slavery, like literally the grossest part about it was taking a human being and literally making that person a product, right? Like literally, like we were financial assets. Like people, the word mortgage came from, the initial mortgages were on slaves. That's where the term comes from. They mortgaged, they took out loans on human bodies. So like, as descendants, that's where we come from. That's where our people come from. It's amazing to me that more people don't talk about materialism itself, not as being, because we got to have stuff, we got to have sustenance. But that ability to be able to be so materialistic when knowing where we come from, I've always thought that that's like something that you should, like, it should automatically be checked, especially coming from us, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? So,
but
like,
it's society, it's Facebook, it's marketing. It's I mean, so I have a marketing business, and the nature of my job is to get you to spend some money. So I mean, I think it's we got capitalism. You got all kind of things that's pulling at our purses. So I think it's our lack of discipline and knowing and really knowing who we are. Like you said, where we came from, what we had to endure, how we had to fight. Once we have the discipline in that, then I think it'll be easier to have those financial conversations or be transparent when you dealing with stuff. Like, we don't want our kids to know when we dealing with situations. You know what I'm saying? We don't want them to have to ever worry about, where are we gonna get this food, or when we gonna get some heat in the house, or you don't never want your kids worrying about that. But I think in a sense they grow up not knowing how hard it is, or the struggle, and how we need to like I know you want this North Face coat or these UGG boots, or I know you want this, but listen, it's 5 of us in the house,
and that's something that is, across the board in our society, period. Like, even for folks like most white folks that's in this country, they ain't been here as long as we were. So like, especially in a place like Cleveland, when the factories came, the Industrial Revolution, and they got all the people from Eastern Europe and Italians and stuff, they came with that immigrant work ethic, right? Like that immigrant frugality. And then like society itself just makes everybody just like, I think it's so obvious, like when we look at our president right now, it's like everybody's trying to be a star some way. You feel what I'm saying? Like,
right.
I think in a certain type of way that it kind of explains Trump's appeal, is that he's like almost the worst one. Like, the same stuff that we talking about, like, he just want to be famous. He just wants to be the biggest, I'm the smartest, or, what I'm saying? That fancy type thing. And I think as a society-wide, we've gotten baser about that stuff, like that, forgetting where grandmama and them, that frugality, that humility about that. I don't know.
Well, like I said, that's why I said it's kind of a psychosis, because until you fix, you can't. A person's behavior is stimulated by how they think. So as long as I don't think highly of myself, even though I may try to project this image to others that I do, then I will repeat behaviors that will try to continuously make me look good or make me feel good about myself or look good to others. So until we really address those issues, I think those are the issues that really drive the behavior of excess spending and not valuing money. And it's like, I always look at it like, people always say, oh, there's no money in the hood, and I'm like, man, the hood has been the bread basket to the world. You got people who travel from halfway around the world to move into your hood so they can become wealthy because of how we spend money. And it's sad that we're not harnessing those resources for ourselves. It's times that we look at other continents, like we look at the continent of Africa, and we say, well, how can these Africans allow other people to come into their homelands and just steal diamonds and steal all the natural resources? And, when you really think about it, that's exactly what they're doing in your neighborhood. It's just it's just in another way. But it's just as devious, it's just as calculated, and it's just even more so on your part because you willfully participate in this. In Africa, some people have to do what they have to do. You don't have to go to that hair store. You don't have to go to that corner store, but you do. Yeah. So it's even worse because you have the option of getting in your car and driving somewhere else a lot of times. Yeah. And you still continue to do it. So, like I said, until you change a person's mindset, their behaviors are always going to be the same.
I think also needs to be a part of the conversation about material conditions. Like, literally, all right, so at the bottom realm of the economic ladder in our country, it's black and brown folk, right? The poorest, all right? Because when we start talking about wealth, we're not talking about cash. We're not talking about stuff. We're talking about accumulating assets over time. That wealth, literally, even though we can always see a Jay-Z or a Oprah and there's a Bob Johnson, there's a couple, right? But if you add up the actual wealth of the collective community, it's lesser. And the thing is the only way that that's not going to be the case is if thousands and multitudes of people earn more. First of all, because you got to get to the point where you earn more than enough to live. When I just said half of the country don't earn enough to live, and then jobs now, the barrier for entry is way higher, like to actually make a good living.
Listen,
right? Like,
I know a place right now that's in mid-Ohio looking for welders, starting out at $80,000 a year.
Yeah,
they looking for, and they want to hire minorities. I know a couple other industries, a couple other businesses that have a skill set need and want to hire minorities, but can't because the workforce don't permit. I mean, it's not available.
So do you think like it's more opportunities out there than the productivity, like people's wealth actually shows? Like in a place like Cleveland, we know Cleveland used to have all these factories. Our whole part of the country, these jobs don't exist. Like for somebody like my dad had a high school education, went to tech school, become an electrician while we lived in the projects in Akron. He went to school, got a good union job, and was making more than enough to be able to, buy houses and
But he had the discipline to carry out a plan and stick to it.
I hear what you're saying, but the reality is that job doesn't exist in the plentiful way that it used to. Like, I mean, it's almost like, what's the number one employer in society? It's retail. Most people work at stores, right?
But see, then that's a problem because how many of them can install solar panels? How many of them can weld? How many of them can do what your dad did as an electrician?
Well,
you know what I mean?
I kind of see the other side of it because I work at Cleveland Job Corps. So you're talking about welders, you're talking about fitting people to jobs. That's exactly what I do every day. I work with carpenters, I work with bricklayers, I work with the needs of the community. And first off, we have to start. It's not that those jobs aren't there. We have to start taking advantage of those opportunities because a lot of our community will walk past Job Corps and say that place is for bad kids and have an opportunity and not do it. I have students every day who turn down union jobs because they can't stop smoking weed. So we have opportunity. There is opportunity there. It may not be at Ford. It may be where you were talking with the welding job, or it may be with a larger construction company. We just had our family owns property where the opportunity corridor is being built, and they were looking for minority employees that could work on the road that lived in the neighborhood. They didn't find that many, and it's challenging. But we have to start, those opportunities are there, but we have to take advantage of. And they're no cost. Job Corps, 16 to 24 years old, is no cost.
All right, so we got a few minutes. I don't know. I feel like there's got to be a reason why like half of the country makes so little amount of money, and I don't think it's just like, they just don't want to do it. Like, I mean,
I see more of that I see more of that than because the opportunity is there. It's not like they haven't stopped developing stuff since the 80s or the 70s. They haven't stopped making things. Opportunities are there and they're opening up, and we have the capacity to build more opportunities. But we have to have the discipline ourselves with our schoolwork, with our jobs, with, you know, like with our plans. You know, like we make plans and it's like, yeah, you know, but this cruise look good. I need a break, you know, and then go on a cruise. So it's, you know, it's a lot, man. It's a social thing. It's a cultural thing.
I think. Let me give you another narrative. We got a few minutes left, but so our country, we used to make a lot of stuff. Right, like we used to make a lot of stuff. It's a lot of power to like when you actually had the manufacturing, blah blah blah. Now, a lot of those jobs, robots and shipping it to different countries where you can do it a lot cheaper, like that's a class of type of job that literally, like it really, like, I mean, people have limited finances. Like you can't. I mean. You gotta, like, most people like to work in their communities or some type of place, and I just have never. I mean, I don't know. Like I'm a hardworking man myself. Like if it was a job I can make like $35 an hour, I'd take it. Like
you would think so, but I'm telling you, I work with young people. I work with young people every day, and they struggle to do the simple things. It's not even the big things. Being on time, coming in dress code. You know, every job has a uniform. Just coming in uniform. Not letting the little things trip you up. You know, they can't, or you know, being able to put the drugs aside. We haven't even gotten to the skill part of the job or the work part of it. We're talking about things that take place all before you punch the clock, getting there on time, being in uniform, accepting correction.
This is a great thing. On Thursday, we've got to continue this conversation because there's a couple of things that I think, like, all right, our community, all right, our kids, hood kids, poor kids, their condition, because I'm a firm believer, like I don't ever believe lesser of, like, people are people and they become what they were groomed or not groomed to be. And there's a lot of trauma in people that, because of the, like you said about that kind of self-hatred type stuff that happens, that like those people, they at the lowest rung anyway in society really don't care. So they easy to go with the personal responsibility. You should do better instead of caring about the whole woman of a child.
Here's the thing. Where the start, we all have mental health issues. All of us, just from how we were culturally brought into this country. So we have mental health issues, and to I think that's where a conversation of reparations should start, is helping us get back mentally where we need to be.
All right, we're gonna have to wrap it up for today. I want to thank my cousin Roy, Levy.
All right,
Big Bryce. Thanks. We're gonna keep this going, and we're gonna continue this on Thursday. Thank you guys for tuning in to People Talk. We appreciate you.